I don't know if you've heard recently, but if you run in the circles that I run in on the internet and such, then you know that Dylan Mulvaney is back. And if I don't know how it could possibly be, but if you don't know who that is, it's an individual got a whole bunch of major corporate attention, sponsorships, etc., because this individual essentially became the face of transgenderism, the trans sexual movement, more or less. And born biologically male, began to adopt the mannerisms, certain external presentational kind of feminine characteristics, and adopting those things and making a platform out of them, even adopting a educational platform for them with the intention of teaching others how to manifest, if they felt so inclined to do so, a similar path in their own daily life. How to dress, makeup, and cosmetic tutorials, hair, demeanor, whatever, right? And mostly on social media, mostly through the especially new media stuff, the highly visual, primarily video platform social media, TikTok, Facebook Reels, this, Snapchat and Instagram and whatever. And so developed this enormous amount of attention, not only specifically for this individual, but also specifically, or kind of more generally, for the movement as a whole, anyone that is supposedly identifying themselves in that fashion. And this got a whole bunch of corporate sponsorships, corporate attention, most notable of which was Bud Light, the very weak kind of urine water beer that it is, which has almost always, as far as I am aware, been associated with sporting events. Before this, probably the most notable endorsement deal that they had before that was with the UFC, Dana White, Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey, so forth. And so very heavily masculine energy. Like usually they would sponsor things like rock and roll main stages, or big time sporting events, arenas. Well, because of the endorsement deal with Dylan Mulvaney, basically the bottom fell out from under them, and they have not recovered from it. They've tried to double down on their other more masculine endorsement since then. They dropped the endorsement deal with Mulvaney and have tried to go in the opposite direction. The UFC once again, Peyton Manning, the NFL, and just hasn't brought them back yet. I mean, we're still in the middle of these kind of stories, but hasn't brought them back yet. They haven't bounced back. And some think that maybe this is the end for them, because Anhauser-Busch has always kind of struggled in terms of real beer, association with real beer. Like, and what I mean by that is like the IPA, Guinness, like heavier, thicker draught stouts, things of that nature, versus Pilsners, which are a light beer. They usually would market themselves in a it's better by volume type of situation, Keystone Light type era, where you can drink a lot of them with a low alcohol content, so you can drink a lot of them and you won't get hammered quite as quickly. And associated as well with the type of beer that you don't buy it, you rent it, and so forth, right? Anyway, Mulvaney is back, With the cancellation of that Bud Light deal that this person had, basically, we've been taught. Let me kind of circle around this a little bit. We've been told through various forms of media for a very long time that you only get one chance in show business. As an athlete, you're told this: you get one shot at the draft, you get one shot on the big main stages, and if you don't make it that one time, that's it. There's no second chances. There's no leftover bones about it. If you don't make it, that's it. And a lot of athletes have lived that way. A lot of people in performing arts have lived that way, in music and such. You get one shot to perform in front of whoever it is. And if you don't capitalize, you don't make it in that shot, that's it. You're not going to be able to call him back a second time. And it's not really true, but it's especially seeming to be less and less and less true over time. Joe Flacco coming off of his couch to lead the Cleveland Browns to a playoff berth. Like, it seems less and less that would ever be true. And in part, I think, because of the way trainers train athletes now. And then I think also because a lot of these sports are so big. There's so many teams. There's so many secondary outfits and lower leagues and places where you can kind of fall into as a safety net and then work your way back up. There's plenty of examples of players that didn't make it the first time in the NFL and then got cut, went to Canada, went to arena, went to another similar sport like rugby, played for a little while, kind of bided their time, and then got picked up later. Or in certain instances, they retired and then got picked up by some team that was really desperate later, because, quite frankly, some of these people, they're just not that good and they end up getting cut eventually. But we were told that you only get one shot. It's turning out, no, you don't. Actually, there are redos. There are second chances. There are alternative pathways to take. And so where we are now is Dylan Mulvaney first tried the social influencer thing, and mild success, like splash success, but the controversy kind of choked things out. And then now stand-up comedy, performing music, and neither one has been accepted well. And I was talking to my wife about this, of what I see. This is what I see, and this is the part of it that might get me into trouble, but this is what I see. I see a young man at one point or another, young boy at one point or another, that was desperate for approval, desperate for validation, and desperate for attention, which, to be totally fair, is everyone. That's what everyone wants. Most significantly, we want our parents' attention. Ask any kid, doesn't matter the family size, the family demographics, income level, or all that stuff. Every child just wants their parents to notice them, as well as older siblings that they might look up to, other older family members that they might look up to, this sort of thing. Like, they want to be noticed. Like, there's the meme of notice me senpai type thing, right? We want someone to see us. We exist. We matter, right? That's what we want as a whole, generally, as a human race. And unfortunately, a simple reality is that many of us are not going to get it. Schools are too big, classrooms too heavily overpopulated, most teams even too big, too overpopulated for coaches to notice you. And if you have a really high performing team of any kind, maybe a band or a performing art that's really successful, really high performing, then the pressure is on, and if you're not one of the good ones, one of the high performing talents on that team, guess what? You're not going to get that attention, validation. And until social media, if you didn't get it, you just didn't get it. That's the end of the story. You got one shot and you failed. I think this is what's driven some athletes into multi-sport performance. Scholarships is a factor too, but the idea of, if I can't do it in basketball, maybe I'll get it in baseball. If I can't do it in baseball, maybe tennis, maybe like some of these things, like I gotta try multiple things, because if I can't get it here, I've got to get that attention and validation, otherwise I'm worth nothing, worth less. Some not succeeding in any of those organized faculties, they will turn to peer validation, their friend group. They're going to become the class clown. Maybe they were already being bullied due to their low performance in other facets or academics, and so they'll turn to, I can't even list the number of like very successful comedians that originally went into comedy because it was the only way to protect themselves from the bullies. They would do ventriloquism, magic, illusions, things of that nature that draw attention while at the same time give them a shield to deflect negative attention. Because if you can't get the positive attention, you often end up gathering negative attention instead. And so we have all of that happening. 2007, the first iPhone is released, and an entire new, brave new world essentially is opened up, a Pandora's box, if you will. And now there's a new way to receive validation. MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, now TikTok, YouTube. There's this new way to receive validation from strangers. Who cares? Clicks, likes, and the people that designed these things, the algorithms and such, they know how addictive it is, and they designed it to be addictive, to take up time and attention. Because what some of the experts are saying now, rather than being at one time it was a production economy, industry, making things that people need. Then it became a consumer economy, selling things people want. And then it became an attention, an information economy, knowing the things that people need to know in order to do things, right? That's why a lot of the early, really successful social media accounts were those that were informational in nature, like let's say game theory, film theory, wisecrack. And then now we're in the point of, it's an attention economy. It's about how many eyes do you have on your content at a given moment. The more eyes, the more value. The more value, the more validation. The more successful, the more important, the more persuasive. So what I see is, you had this young man, this young boy at one point or another, that at some point realized, I want that validation, I want that attention, I want someone to confirm for me I do exist and I matter. But it didn't happen, which is a common thing, which is what I'm reiterating. It happens to everyone sooner or later. The people that you want to notice you don't notice you. Or they notice someone else instead, in place of you. Any older sibling understands this. When the new baby came home, you were the star of the show up until that moment. new baby comes home, and all of a sudden that baby gets all of the attention and you don't anymore. And nearly every child goes through a regressive phase where the thing that gets the younger child the most perceived attention, they will begin to emulate. So if the younger child is in diapers needing to be changed, they'll forget how to use the toilet and need to be changed again, and they'll have to relearn how to be potty trained. It's a pretty common thing. It's not super strange or outlandish. It's well documented. These things happen. But how you adapt to that in an internet age, how do you adapt to that in an age in which if people don't pay attention to you, you might as well not exist? Basically, you're living the existence that everyone ever has always existed within before the internet, but you don't know that because you're too young and also too impulsive and emotionally unstable, emotionally fragile to reckon with it. And so it reminded me of what she and I were discussing. It reminds me of Hannah Montana / Miley Cyrus. If you aren't familiar, Hannah Montana was this Disney manufacture character. Miley Cyrus, daughter of Billy Ray Cyrus, was being marketed as this highly promotable, young, attractive, preteen girl, straight hair, angelic voice, a good role model for young girls. But it was a character she played. It's not Miley Cyrus. And so she grows up and she goes through the transitional adolescent phase. She begins to develop breasts. She gets a little taller. She's no longer that tiny, cute Disney Channel girl that was being marketed before. And Disney essentially drops her completely, but doesn't stop marketing the character. The handbags and the fashion line and the cosmetics line and all this stuff with this doctored, altered, imagined version of Miley Cyrus steams heavily on because it's basically $1 billion industry at that point. And she's going and she's trying to become her own person, her own woman. But nobody likes that. At least not as much as they liked Hannah Montana and the middle-class soccer mom demographic that was so central to the marketing promotional push that Hannah Montana relied on is the primary one that rejects the new Miley Cyrus. And they would ask her in interviews, why don't you just be Hannah Montana? And she would respond, that's just a character I played. It's not me, and I don't want to pretend anymore. Well, she's still not recovered from all of that, whatever that is. She still hasn't recovered from it. She's not as popular as Hannah Montana ever was. And even though she's not nothing, like she does have marketability, it's not what it was. And she knows it, and everyone knows it. And the addictive spiral, the public relations spiral, just all that stuff that has gone along with it. And I did a video about that a long time ago, but just the sadness that I kind of feel in my heart towards her and that situation of that someone who just wanted people to see her who she was, and nobody wanted it. They wanted that other fake thing. Seems like, to me, this is my perception, that it's the opposite now. And that people are trying to pretend to be something that they're not for the purpose of screens. It's something that sociologists have already begun to study. People intentionally facsimilizing themselves, making an artificial copy of themselves for display on the internet, to get likes, to get clicks, to get views. But it's not themselves. And so they have to daily, usually, sometimes minute by minute, they have to put the costume on for the world. It becomes intertwined with their income as they become monetized and so forth. And now they have to live this double life. Everyone expects them to be something that they're not. They can't go out in public now without having to put the mask on. Plenty of people in Hollywood have already talked about this, that Halle Berry can't just throw on a pair of ratty jeans and go out and get her mail. She's got to put on a face of makeup first, because there are people outside of her house with telephoto lenses that are only there because they are hoping to snap an embarrassing, maybe a sexualized photograph, maybe even pornographic photograph of her that they can then sell to someone. And by doing so, they'll be able to make a little money at the expense of whoever that human being happens to be. There's whole groups of people that exist on the internet that they only exist for the purpose of trying to break through the walls, the literal firewalls of social media influencers, to try and get the inappropriate, the hidden, the secret photos or message correspondence records of influencers so that they can publish them and make a quick dime at someone else's expense. So you're not safe. No one is safe. No one is safe under any circumstance in today's society at any time, because people are always watching. People are always trying to see you slip up. And where it really becomes relevant to me is that I've heard sermon after sermon, ministry after ministry, pastor after pastor, and book after book, and just whatever, written about that so many ministers have felt that way for generations. I'm in a fishbowl. I can't afford to be truly honest about what I'm suffering through, what I'm experiencing challenge-wise, because if I did, I would be rejected. I'd be devoured by my critics. People in ministry have been saying stuff like this for a long, long time, and we ignored them. We would wait for them to burn out and then throw them to the wolves. We would shoot our wounded is the language that so often permeated Christian circles, but nobody cared enough to actually do anything about it. And now that it seems that same disease is beginning to spread to the rest of society. It used to be specifically kind of quarantined ministers, Hollywood, entertainment. Two very small but insular societies that are very difficult to get into, and once you're in, unless you mess up. But with social media, with screens facing towards us all of the time, with a camera faced both directions all of the time, now everyone experiences it. Everyone is experiencing this exact same thing. And so, all those ministers that it would seem like they have the perfect expertise to be able to solve or to speak into or to bring the gospel into them. The thing is, the reason ministers have been struggling with this, the reason that ministers have been sweating in it is, quite frankly, they don't know. They don't know what the solution is. They don't know what the solution is because often, what I would suggest, they don't know the Bible. They don't. Because if they truly trusted in Christ, it would seem, they would know, turn to Christ, repent of your sin, close the screen, and move on with your life. It would seem like that would be the obvious thing. And a lot of ministries are starting to adopt similar processes. But the thing is, well, that's old-fashioned. That's backward. You're a dinosaur in an information age. Maybe this is just another way of the evil one trying to infiltrate and corrupt the church. Maybe it is. Maybe this is just a matter of that God made humans to operate in a specific way, and that through technology, through social media, through influence, through addictive spirals, the evil one has found a way to take what mankind was made to be and do and just discarded it, rebelled against it. Tower of Babel style. And that maybe it's a matter of that it's going to take another confusing of the languages, maybe. Where Christians, instead of trying to retreat from the special languages that Christians have used to label things, words like sin, transgression, repentance, words like that maybe by embracing those words and admitting that we are different than those that are around us, we are a culture within the culture. Maybe that's what it takes in order to try and help someone like a Dylan Mulvaney, that despite multiple spiraling attempts for the attention and validation that he's desiring, that little boy inside of him, that he's wanting for so long, maybe it's just a matter of that, no, you were made in the image of God. And that whether people are looking at you or not, the Father sees you. And that he sees you in love. A love that desires more for you than just clicks. To control you. That more than just the way that social media tries to control you. Manipulate you. Exploit you. More than just the way society wants to try to parade you. More. And that when you accept the limitations, that nature that God has given us has placed upon you, when you accept those limitations, you begin to learn how to thrive in them as strengths. Because that's the image of God placed upon you. And that when you recognize that, you know what, maybe you don't like everything about yourself. No one does. But God made you the way you are. To be in community with his church, the body. And when you're together with his church, you find out that they have strengths and you have strengths, and those strengths and strengths, they combine to become this impossibly powerful unit that has the ability to destroy insecurity, to root out anxiety, because love casts out fear. Because self-control is a better conduit than is confusion. That restraint is a better pathway than is indulgence. Maybe that's what maybe that would end up, maybe that would allow a person in the situation that Dylan Mulvaney or so many others, in those fragile states that they are in, may would help them find their footing a little bit more efficiently. Maybe.